story, we talk about a rising African leader making waves both on the ground and online. Known for his charisma, military fatigues, and fiery anti-Western stance, he is not your typical head of state. He is Burkina Faso's military leader.
While the world continues to underestimate Africa, Burkina Faso just dropped a bombshell that's sending shockwaves across the continent. A $523 million futuristic smart city, complete with Africa's tallest tower, an independent power grid, and a name that's already sparking continental conversations: Ibrahim Traoré City. But here's what makes this story truly extraordinary. This isn't another foreign-funded project dictated by Western interests. This is African capital, African vision, and African execution. And it's happening right now, in a country that many wrote off as too small, too poor, and too unstable to dream this big. Today, we're diving deep into what this groundbreaking project really means, not just for Burkina Faso, but for the future of African development, sovereignty, and the new generation of leaders who refuse to accept the limitations others have placed on our continent. Picture this: a warm June morning in Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso. Construction vehicles roar to life in the Ouaga 2000 district as President Ibrahim Traoré, a man who came to power not through political grooming, but through decisive action, places his hand on the foundation stone of what may become Africa's most ambitious urban development project. In that single moment, Burkina Faso's narrative shifted from survival to sovereignty, from reacting to crisis to actively reshaping its future. Even Traoré's most ardent supporters were stunned. They'd grown accustomed to his bold policies and uncompromising speeches about African independence. But a futuristic smart city? That was beyond what anyone expected. The project, officially titled Ibrahim Traoré City, isn't just another urban expansion. This is a meticulously planned smart city that will feature the 35-story Burkindi Tower, set to become the tallest structure in the region. Alongside this architectural marvel, the development will include 15 modern high-rises, 700 contemporary apartments, 2,000 office spaces, a sprawling shopping complex, state-of-the-art health facilities, and leisure spaces designed for a new era of Burkinabe life. But here's what makes this project revolutionary. It's designed for complete self-sufficiency. The city will operate on an independent energy grid, featuring solar farms, backup battery systems, and advanced energy storage technology. This means freedom from the rolling blackouts and external energy dependency that have plagued not just Burkina Faso, but much of West Africa for decades. The financing structure tells an even more compelling story. Backed by 320 billion CFA francs, approximately $523 million, this isn't an aid-funded project with strings attached. According to government sources, the funding comes from local contractors, regional partners, and select African investors, making it one of the first major infrastructure developments in Burkina Faso to rely primarily on homegrown and Pan-African capital rather than Western loans or conditional assistance. As President Traoré declared at the groundbreaking ceremony, this city is meant to demonstrate that African nations can dream big, fund big, and own their future without compromise. Those aren't just words. They're a declaration of independence wrapped in concrete and steel. To understand why a city named after a sitting president is creating such a stir across Africa, we need to understand Ibrahim Traoré himself. His rise to power wasn't the product of long political grooming or elite party maneuvering. Instead, it was the sudden emergence of a new kind of leadership, one forged in conflict, frustration, and an unwavering desire for genuine change. Born in 1988 in the Haoué region of Burkina Faso, Traoré grew up far from the polished corridors of political power in Ouagadougou. His early years were defined by a country constantly battling the economic and political hangovers of post-colonial dependency. When he joined the military as a young man, he excelled as an artillery officer and developed a reputation for discipline, courage, and an unusually direct way of speaking. His colleagues often described him as someone who didn't do politics, but believed in results. The Burkina Faso he served, however, was unraveling. Insurgent groups were spreading across the Sahel, displacing tens of thousands, paralyzing agriculture, and shaking public trust in government. When Traoré led the coup in September 2022 that deposed then-President Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba, it wasn't framed as an act of personal ambition, but as a last resort. His message was simple and direct. Burkina Faso could no longer afford leaders who promised security, but delivered paralysis. What happened next surprised even those who supported the coup. Instead of ruling as a distant military figure, Traoré quickly became known for his public accessibility and grassroots appeal. He made a point of visiting markets, military outposts, and rural farming cooperatives, talking not just about security, but about economic dignity and national pride. He avoided the luxury trappings associated with many African heads of state, often appearing in simple military fatigues, which for many symbolize solidarity rather than superiority. But Traoré's significance goes beyond optics. His ideological stance, boldly anti-imperialist and unapologetically pan-African, has positioned him as a voice for a continent tired of being treated as a resource mine for others. He reduced reliance on French military presence and economic contracts, pivoting instead to cooperation with countries like Russia and other non-Western partners willing to work without the baggage of conditional aid. His speeches regularly reference African history and emphasize sovereignty as the foundation of development. This message has resonated deeply beyond Burkina Faso's borders. In Mali, Niger, and even as far away as Senegal and Ghana, his name is now invoked at rallies demanding African-led solutions to African problems. Pan-African youth groups have adopted his image as a symbol of generational change, often portraying him alongside liberation-era icons like Thomas Sankara and Kwame Nkrumah. Social media platforms are flooded with posts hailing him as an African lion, a figure willing to risk political backlash for bold choices, including the one that birthed Ibrahim Traoré City. This growing influence represents something many thought was lost: authentic African leadership that prioritizes continental interests over Western approval. Ibrahim Traoré City isn't just a collection of high-rise buildings. It's an ideological blueprint disguised as urban development, a city designed to embody sovereignty, resilience, and modern African identity. Every aspect of this project challenges the dependency models that have dominated African development for decades. At its core, the city is designed to operate independently of the external vulnerabilities that often cripple other West African capitals. The self-sustaining energy system isn't just about convenience, it's about liberation. The development includes comprehensive plans for solar farms, backup battery grids, and small-scale energy storage technologies that will keep the city running even if Burkina Faso's national grid falters. In a region where power outages are still common, this represents a deliberate step toward energy independence, perfectly aligned with Traoré's broader policy of self-reliance. The urban layout challenges conventional African city planning. Unlike Ouagadougou's crowded core, where housing shortages and informal settlements are common, this new city is being meticulously planned with integrated eco-friendly architecture, water recycling systems, and green corridors designed to reduce urban heat. The roads are designed to accommodate future electric bus routes, cycle tracks, and pedestrian-friendly zones, reflecting a long-term vision of sustainable mobility rather than the car-dependent sprawl that plagues so many fast-growing African cities. At the economic heart of the development is the Burkindi Business Center, which will house the 2,000 office spaces and an innovation district specifically targeting fintech, agricultural technology, logistics, and small-scale manufacturing startups. This isn't accidental. Traoré's administration has repeatedly stressed that Burkina Faso cannot rely solely on raw material exports if it wants to become a resilient economy. By creating a commercial hub with tax incentives for local startups and Pan-African investors, the city aims to incubate homegrown businesses capable of competing on a continental scale. The cultural and social components of the project are equally ambitious. Plans include a performing arts complex, community centers, libraries, and multi-purpose leisure spaces. Rather than simply being a residential and commercial zone, Ibrahim Traoré City is envisioned as a complete lifestyle ecosystem, one that fosters education, culture, and community cohesion, while also providing healthcare access through a state-of-the-art medical center designed to reduce dependence on overseas medical trips. The symbolic elements of the design cannot be overlooked. The 35-story Burkindi Tower isn't just intended as an office building, but as an icon of aspiration, visibly declaring to anyone who sees Ouagadougou's skyline that Burkina Faso is no longer content to live in the shadow of others. Its architectural design draws inspiration from traditional Burkinabe motifs, blending modern materials with cultural aesthetics as a statement of pride in indigenous identity. Even the construction strategy breaks with convention. Unlike many African megaprojects dominated by foreign firms, Traoré has emphasized the use of local contractors, engineers, and skilled labor wherever possible. Training programs are being implemented to prepare young Burkinabe workers for high-tech construction roles. This means that beyond its physical buildings, the city is intended to leave behind a skilled workforce capable of replicating similar developments in the future. The timeline is aggressive yet realistic. Early infrastructure work, power lines, road networks, and water systems began almost immediately after the groundbreaking. The government has indicated plans to complete key residential and business blocks within 5 years, an ambitious pace that reflects both confidence and urgency. No matter how visionary Ibrahim Traoré City appears on paper, its success depends on navigating some of Burkina Faso's harshest realities. While the project stands as a symbol of ambition and independence, the country continues to face an environment defined by security crises, economic pressures, and high public expectations that could make or break the entire initiative. The most immediate challenge is security. Burkina Faso remains one of the countries hardest hit by Sahel insurgencies. Large parts of the northern and eastern regions remain vulnerable to attacks, and hundreds of thousands of citizens have been displaced, creating both humanitarian and social tensions. Though Ibrahim Traoré City is positioned in Ouagadougou, a comparatively secure zone, it cannot be completely insulated from the national security picture. Critics argue that a futuristic city may have limited value if large portions of the population remain outside the reach of basic stability. However, Traoré's administration has responded by restructuring the military and creating community-based security programs aimed at building trust and improving intelligence gathering in affected regions. These are long-term solutions, and their effectiveness will likely be judged in the same time frame as the city's construction. The question quietly circulating among analysts is whether a country can simultaneously fight an asymmetric war and build one of Africa's most advanced cities without overstretching itself. The answer may lie in viewing these initiatives as complementary rather than competing priorities, with urban development providing the economic foundation necessary for long-term security. The second major challenge is economic balance. While the official budget is pegged at 320 billion CFA francs, questions linger about opportunity costs. Some economists warn that such a large investment concentrated in one district could unintentionally widen economic disparities between urban and rural areas, if not matched by parallel development in agriculture, infrastructure, and job creation in other regions. Rural communities, which form the backbone of Burkina Faso's food supply and cultural identity, could perceive the project as distant from their daily struggles. However, there are signs of efforts to mitigate this concern. The city is being promoted not just as a luxury urban enclave, but as an economic engine meant to attract regional investment and create jobs that ripple outward across the economy. If successfully managed, it could shift Burkina Faso's reputation from one of aid dependency to one of innovation and growth. But failure to deliver on employment promises or accessible housing could quickly turn optimism into resentment. International dynamics add another layer of complexity. Traoré's deliberate shift away from traditional Western alliances toward non-Western partners has drawn applause from Pan-African groups, but raised eyebrows among Western institutions. This could impact access to certain forms of financing or technical expertise, forcing Burkina Faso to rely more heavily on internal and regional resources. While this aligns with Traoré's sovereignty agenda, it also narrows the margin for error. The project must succeed largely on its own terms, without the safety net of traditional development partnerships. The emergence of Ibrahim Traoré City has already transcended its physical form. Even before a single tower has reached its full height, the project has entered the public imagination as a symbol of possibility, a concept rare in a country often framed in headlines about insurgency and instability. First, it represents a fundamental redefinition of identity. For decades, Burkina Faso was primarily known internationally for its agricultural economy, and more recently, its security crisis. Now, with the announcement of a technologically advanced, self-sufficient urban hub, the narrative is shifting from one of survival to one of innovation. Instead of being seen as a nation on the periphery of global development, Burkina Faso is positioning itself as a bold actor capable of shaping its destiny. This shift matters because perception often drives investment, and early signals suggest that regional entrepreneurs and international partners are already expressing interest in participating in the project's innovation clusters and commercial zones. Second, the city represents generational change. Traoré, being among the youngest leaders in Africa, embodies a broader demographic reality. Most of Africa's population is under 30. The design and purpose of Ibrahim Traoré City align with that demographic by focusing on modern jobs, technology-driven industries, and sustainable urban living. If successful, it could serve as a model for youth-led transformation, countering the narrative that Africa's young leaders are either inexperienced or short-sighted. Instead, it would showcase that youth-driven leadership can produce forward-looking solutions that benefit future generations rather than merely managing present crises. Third, the symbolism extends to political independence. By choosing to emphasize local ownership and regional partnerships rather than leaning on traditional Western donors, Traoré is signaling a pivot in how development is approached. The city is an architectural version of his broader political stance. Burkina Faso will define its path even if it breaks with old alliances or challenges entrenched global interests. That symbolism resonates across Africa, especially in neighboring Sahelian states where debates over sovereignty, resource control, and Western military presence dominate national discourse. The project serves as proof that alternatives to the traditional development model aren't just theoretical, they're being built in real time. However, symbolism is a double-edged sword. By naming the city after himself, Traoré has invited inevitable comparisons to leaders who built monuments in their honor. Supporters see it as a necessary morale boost for a nation that needs confidence, while critics warn it could become a political vulnerability if the city fails to meet its ambitious goals. In this sense, the city is also a personal test for Traoré's legacy, a living referendum on whether his vision of sovereignty and development can withstand economic, political, and social pressures. Looking ahead, if Ibrahim Traoré City succeeds, it could fundamentally change how African nations approach urban planning and development financing. The project may spark a shift towards smart, energy-independent developments that reduce reliance on outdated colonial-era infrastructure models. It could inspire other governments to invest in cities as centers of innovation rather than simply administrative hubs. More importantly, it may empower African leaders to rethink development financing, focusing more on internal resources and Pan-African collaborations, rather than waiting for foreign approval or navigating the conditions of external loans. The ripple effects could extend far beyond urban planning. Success here could encourage similar bold initiatives across the continent, from Nigeria's tech hubs to Kenya's green energy projects to South Africa's industrial innovations. It represents a template for how African nations can leverage their own resources and regional partnerships to achieve development goals that seemed impossible just a few years ago. But perhaps the most important future impact is psychological. For ordinary Burkinabe, seeing cranes rise and foundations being laid provides something intangible yet powerful: belief. Belief that their country can do more than endure. Belief that resilience can be transformed into progress. And belief that leadership can move beyond speeches to manifest tangible achievements. This psychological transformation extends beyond Burkina Faso's borders. Across Africa, young people are watching this project as a test case for what's possible when African leaders prioritize continental interests over external approval. Success here could inspire a new generation of leaders to pursue similarly ambitious projects in their own countries. The project also challenges global perceptions of African capability. For too long, the narrative has been that Africa needs external guidance and funding to achieve significant development milestones. Ibrahim Traoré City demonstrates that African nations can conceptualize, finance, and execute world-class development projects using primarily African resources and expertise. Ibrahim Traoré City is ultimately more than a building project. It's a mirror of Burkina Faso's ambitions and a litmus test for what Pan-Africanist leadership can achieve when matched with decisive action. The future of Burkina Faso, and perhaps the broader model for African development, will depend on how well this ambitious symbolism translates into practical outcomes. The stakes couldn't be higher. Success would prove that African nations can break free from dependency models and build world-class infrastructure on their own terms. It would demonstrate that young African leaders can deliver on bold promises and that continental solidarity can translate into tangible economic cooperation. Failure, on the other hand, could reinforce skepticism about ambitious projects in fragile states and provide ammunition for those who argue that African nations should stick to traditional development approaches guided by external partners. But one thing is already certain. Burkina Faso's story is no longer just about what it has survived. Under Ibrahim Traoré's leadership, it has become about what it dares to build. The country has moved from managing crises to creating possibilities, from accepting limitations to defining its own potential. Whether this vision can withstand the pressures of security threats, financial constraints, and political scrutiny remains to be seen. But the very fact that it's being attempted represents something profound. A new chapter in African development where sovereignty isn't just political rhetoric, but a practical blueprint for progress. For those of us who believe in Africa's potential, Ibrahim Traoré City represents something we've been waiting to see. African leadership that doesn't just talk about independence but builds it one foundation stone at a time. What do you think about Ibrahim Traoré City? Is this the beginning of a new model for African urban development? Or are the challenges too great for this ambitious vision to succeed? Can a project like this truly transform not just Burkina Faso's image, but inspire similar initiatives across the continent? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear from fellow believers in African potential about whether this represents the future of continental development, or if you see obstacles I haven't addressed. If this deep dive into African innovation and leadership resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. We're committed to bringing you the stories that mainstream media ignores, the evidence of African excellence, the celebration of our civilizations, and the analysis of leaders who are reshaping our continent's future. Ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest videos exploring African culture, history, and the contemporary leaders who are writing the next chapter of our continental story. Until next time, stay informed, stay proud, and keep believing in Africa's limitless potential.